Hello, and today we're looking at Juniper and its little friend Jin. Juniper is an 8-channel clock and modulation source. Its internal matrix gives it the capability to generate all these different complex waveforms. You've got 8 channels which can all modulate each other, 8 outputs for each individual channel, 3 CV inputs and a clock input. Each channel can generate its own waveform, its own amplitude, offset, morphing, and each of them can be individually modulated from each channel into another channel, creating really complex modulation structures. You can use this as an intuitive CV looper or for triggering complex envelopes that you've created and recorded, which you can store and record internally and recall at any time. It's 8 HP, whereas the Jin is 4 HP and offers you another 8 inputs, this nice rotary controller for a variety of different functions, and also a play and a record option for when you're doing recording internally. Let's get in and have a look, and if you're new to this channel, do please hit subscribe and like. Your support is most appreciated. Thank you. Okay, let's have a look at what these modules can do. I've got a clock input going in to Juniper here, so it's receiving a clock input so it can be synchronized to your whole system. It doesn't have a reset in, but when you go into the main settings here where you can change things like the PPQN and if it's running or not, the reset mode is actually triggered by its run signal, which in this case is the clock signal. So just a quick fact out there, one of the things that I found is stop it running manually and then hit go on your clock. In this case I'm using Pamela, and it jumps into action and synchronizes. At least that's how I've got it synchronized. Anyway, synchronizing out of the way. Let's go through one channel, because basically what you can do for one channel you can do across all 2, 4, 6, 8 channels. That's right, we've got 8 here to play with. And you'll see how powerful this is. This is more than just an LFO module. It does so much more. So in order to hear this, I've got my Spectrophone here. I'm going to take the output of channel 1 and I'll plug it into the Volt Proctive. You can hear that because we have on channel 1 we've got a sine selected, and that's what's causing the pitch to go up and down as a sine wave. So we can change, for example, we can change the waveform. Triangle, square wave, random. Let's turn it up. Nice. This crazy one called Wave Lorenz. And this seems to just kind of, it's like a non-linear waveform. I don't know if you can see that, there's a little dot and it flies around, and I guess you've kind of got pitch on an XY pitch and time or something. I don't know. I'm not quite sure. It's cool though. You've got an envelope and you've got this ramp up as well. And then you've got this in and out, which we'll look at later on. So for each channel, basically, you've got all these different shapes that you can get to. Each one of those shapes, you can then change the frequency, amplitude, you can morph them, you can change the phase, and you can change the offset as well. But within those, you can also do more things. There's more parameters within all of these. So for example, if we want to change the frequency, we select frequency, still on channel 1, and we can change, we can go half the speed, divide by 8. In fact, what I'll do, folks, the whole reason I set this up like this was so you would be able to see a little bit clearer on the MATTHS here. So let me take the output of channel 1 into the MATTHS, and you'll see that on channel 1 there. My cable doesn't get in the way. See, just gives you an idea of what's going on. So what you're seeing there is the same there. So you can speed this all the way up. You know, this is pretty handy. If I hold down the encoder, you can go into fine adjustments, hold it down again, and you got coarse. So that's a great way to kind of quickly navigate around things. You've got the amplitude, turn it up and down. I mean, you know, yeah, you get the idea. Morphing's quite interesting. So for each waveform, you can actually then morph them within themselves. So with this being a sine wave, if we morph this, actually gives it this kind of rise and then a sharp fall. So it becomes something different. And you can go negative with that as well. So that's cool. The phase, yeah, so you can move this a whole 360 degrees out of phase, and the offset as well you can play around with, and you can go minus and negative. And then there's some kind of advanced options within that as well. So if we, I don't know, let's change this to the envelope. So at the minute it looks like a triangle, right? Well, actually, if we go into morph here, we can change the attack time like that. If we hold down this, we can then change with the skew. So actually kind of changes like the length of the rise and fall. So you've got loads of shape here, and then finally hold it down, you've got decay. So you can make very sharp kind of envelopes with it, if that's what you want to do. Now these are all free running LFOs, but there is also an option where you can actually change these so they're not continuously playing. So you can actually change these so they are just a one shot, and then you can send a trigger in from something. So I've got my steppy sequencer playing here. Let me just take the output and I can plug that into either any of these 3 CV inputs, or I've got an additional 8 here on the gin that I can use. So if I plug it into CV input 1, and we're saying that we want that to be a one shot, the trigger source you can then select. You can actually select it from any of the other channels. See, this is where you get the channels interacting with each other. But if we go along, we've got CV1, and now whenever it receives a hit, it will trigger that envelope. So you've got one shots and you've got continuous envelopes as well. So loads that you can get involved with there. I'm just going to turn that off and put that back to continuous for now. And we don't need that anymore. Now there's some other really cool things as well. So, you know, this is before we even get into how the channels interact with each other, and you can do modulation between each of the channels. While we're on here, if we hold this down and turn this dial, we get other things here. So we've actually got a wave folding kind of option. So it's creating this wave folding on that envelope shape that we had, and you can apply that to, you know, if we go to the sine wave, you can hear what it's done there. So that's folder. So there's loads of shaping abilities here. Now the other one that you've got here, which I really like, is scale. So what it'll do now is apply that continuous waveform to a scale, which if we go into frequency and turn down the speed, we've got notes. How cool is that? So if we can, don't know if you can see this, it actually shows you the notes there. If I turn this, it'll go through, it'll play actually through different scales as well that you can apply it to. There's also sample and hold in there, so that means it'll wait for you know, a trigger before it creates a new value. You've got other modes in there. There's loads in here, and this is just still on the first channel. So you've got this across all of the other ones. So I'm just going to go back to scale, turn it off. So we're just back into that for now. Okay, so let's maybe look at what can happen then if we take one of the channels and modulate the other, because we've got 8 here, right? So we've got a sine wave here on channel 1. Now what we can do is we can say, well, I want to create some modulation to these parameters, the frequency, the amplitude, the morphing, the phasing, and so on. So let's say we wanted to change, let's say we wanted to modulate the frequency of this, essentially the speed, which at the minute is divided by 6. If we press the encoder, we get this little menu pop up, and at the minute it says off. If we select that, and then we can choose, channel 2 is now modulating the frequency of channel 1. Or you can channel 3, channel 4, channel 5, channel 6, channel 7, channel 8, and then you've got all your inputs as well that you can send into that, as well as the clock. You can use the clock to actually change the frequency, amplitude, and so on. And you've also got the ability to use this pot as well if you have the gin connected to it. So you can manually jam with that as well, which is cool. So if we leave that as channel 2, whatever waveform that is, I think it's just sine wave at the minute, and you can choose if that's working exponentially or linearly, and the amount it's doing as well, so you can make it modulate it 100% or less. So let's have a look at channel 2 and see what it's doing. So if we hold this button down, select and press 2, or you can do a quick select and 2, we can see that channel 2 is a sine wave. It's running at 1 times the speed. So it's getting a bit crazy. And what we can do is change that waveform. So now channel 1 is being modulated by channel 2's waveform, which is this kind of tangent and LFO, or triangle, or square, or random even. Or this crazy Lorenz. Which is nice. And of course, if we change the frequency of channel 2, we're going to get different interactions, particularly if you've got like channel 1 and channel 2 at different divisions. You've got this kind of constantly morphing modulation going on between the channels. And actually what I'll do as well, keep forgetting I've got the MATTHS here, just so you can see what's going on channel 2. I'll plug that into channel 2 of the MATTHS, which is the blue one. So you can see what channel 2 is doing and how it's manipulating channel 1. And you know, we could play with the offset of channel 2. The other thing we can do is we can have channel 2 modulated by, guess what, any of the other channels. So you can essentially have all the channels modulating each other and then modulating a final channel, or all the channels. It's crazy. It's crazy. And then the cool thing about this, you can save what you've got going on. So you can go pretty crazy with all of this. Save it and then recall it. And that's one of the things I loved about this when I first saw it, was I was thinking for playing live, I use a lot of complex modulation, and I'm often using like several LFOs and envelopes and attenuators and this, that, and the other. I can just record that very sort of intricate modulation into this, which we'll look at in a minute. You can record into Juniper and save it, and then recall it when you're playing live. And that way you don't have to take out so many LFOs and envelopes and all that kind of thing, or combination of. Let's just continue here. So let's go to channel 2, which we're on, and let's morph the waveform of channel 2 by, I don't know, should we maybe by channel 3? Or even by channel 1, which is being modulated by channel 2. So you kind of get this feedback, and it's kind of cancelled itself out. So yeah, maybe you don't want that. So there we go. Channel 3 is changing the morph now of channel 2. Let's see what channel 3 is doing. Let's go to channel 3, and we can change the waveform. Let's take that out as well so you can see channel 3 here on the Mordax. Try not to get these cables in the way. So you can see what's happening there, which is cool. Crazy modulation party already going on. Okay, let's, instead of plugging that into the Volt per octave, let's get a nice melody on the go. Add a bit of reverb, and let's plug that instead into modulation input of the spectrophone. There we go. Because typically you're probably going to want to use this to modulate parameters like, you know, well, anything that you've got available on your oscillator. Now the cool thing as well is because these are all related to each other, because one's modulating the other to the other, they're all working to the same clock, you know, you can take their outputs still independently and plug them into different areas. And just see what you get. And at the minute this is just going through the Ghost by Endorphins. And what I might do, yeah, I might actually, it's got a VCA built into it, so I might take the 4th channel from Juniper and plug that into the VCA. It's that one. So if we go to channel 4 and let's slow that down a little bit. Let's go like divide by 3. And yeah, maybe we don't want it always to close the VCA, so maybe we can use the offset a little. Just to create a bit of that. And we can change the waveform, try different things. And again, let me plug in, where's my cable? There's my cable. Oops. Let me plug that in. I'll come this way. I'm going to need a, take it from the Mordax there. There we go. So now you can see what's going on across all 4 channels on the Mordax there, and how they're working with each other. Set a bit of delay. Nice. Like I say, these don't have to be continuous running. You can go in, you could have any of these triggered so they're one-shots. And you can save these patches as you go along as well. So that's cool, eh? Now there's other things that you can do here as well. Let's just simplify this a little bit, which is quite interesting. Take off the delay and reverb a little bit. And one of the things you can do, so let's have a look at, stay on channel 4, the one that's open in a VCA. One of the things you can do, instead of having a waveform that it gives you, you can actually go to in and choose in as the waveform type. Let's just turn it down a little bit. That's cool. And what we can do, we can actually then choose any of the external 8 or the external 3 of the Juniper, and you could use that as the input. So you could bring in, I don't know, we've got MATTHS here. So if we add MATTHS, let's take the output 4 because my first output's a bit dodgy, and let's go into CV8 and just get that playing. So that's just a looping envelope there. We can scroll along here and we can go external 8. And now it's taking that input from MATTHS. Let's just change the offset, bring that back down. So now it's actually using the waveform from MATTHS on this channel, which is just a cycling envelope, as you can see there. And it's using that now to open and close that VCA. I think I've just changed my tuning, but never mind. Yeah, so you can use external envelopes, external LFOs. You could even use audio frequencies from oscillators and plug that in and use that if you want to. But what's cool is, so if we leave it on in as the waveform type and we go to morph, instead of using external 8, we can actually morph and go through, I believe. Yes, so you can go through any of them. So if we had 3 LFOs into those 3 and then another 8 here, you can manually morph through all of those external inputs. Oh, and there is the pot that you can also use as well. So that's kind of cool. Yeah. Well, if you go back to the waveform, you can just select any of the pre-built ones. So with triangle, as I mentioned before, you can morph all of these waveforms. So let's morph the triangle, and what happens to the triangle, you'll see it here on number 4. The triangle actually becomes more of a kind of rising edge kind of vibe. And you could modulate that as well, because you just press a button and you go, I want to modulate the morphing of that. Where do I want to modulate it from? Let's modulate it from channel 3. And the amount, maybe you just want it to be kind of subtle. Something like that. I should say, by the way, if you're watching this, you probably notice that the blue lights are kind of saturating. I'm afraid it's my camera. It's nothing to do with the module. It's a thing for Canon cameras, apparently. So sorry about that. But actually, talking about those, if you go into the main settings, you can actually go into system settings and you can lower the brightness of these, of both the screen. That's 100%. Maybe I should have had that on there the whole time so you can see it better. But you can also change the LED brightness from 100% down to 15%, which is great, because I must admit, with the blue LEDs, I've had a few modules with blue LEDs and they do get a bit much for your eyes, particularly when you're playing live or in your low light situation. So that's very welcome. Thank you for that. As I mentioned here, this is where you can see what version of the OS that you're on. You've got screensaver as well that you can come on after a certain amount of time. And there's a factory reset and there's a reboot in there as well. You can also, across the whole thing, if you don't like what you've done, you can just go wipe channels and it'll just put everything back to normal. Or you just want to wipe the modulations. You can do that too. The state manager, so that's saving different states, so essentially presets. And so this is your kind of main system settings. Now for each channel, you have, if you double click select, you have some settings per channel. And this is really cool. You can get something called performance and actually see what's going on visually, which is really nice. And here you can actually mute channels. So that's kind of like a performance element to it, which is really nice. I must admit, I think I would want to get to some of these deeper level stuff quite quickly, like, I don't know, speed and things like that. And so I'd probably want to have some CV dials, you know, like attenuators or something that you could just plugged into this just to like get to, I don't know, for speeding stuff up, slowing stuff down, maybe changing the envelope shapes, that sort of thing. You know, if there was a MIDI expander, I suppose that could do something like that. But to be honest, I'm really thinking about this for live performance. And once you've kind of got it set, you know, you're doing so many other things when you play live. You can also copy and paste from different channels, which is nice. So you get something going on channel 1 that you really like, you'll copy it onto channel 8. You can do that, it's ace. And you can also clear all the modulations per channel as well. You can also mute in here as well. So really nice, really nicely thought out. Okay, so I've just done a retune because I knocked things out of tune, and I brought in the second side of Spectrosform now. So we've got side 1 and we've got the first side as well, playing some funky melodies there for us. The reason I'm using Spectrosform, it's got so many modulation inputs, and I guess this lends itself to that. What I'll do actually is show you how to wipe everything. So you can do a full system reboot if you want, but you don't always want to turn it on and off. You can just go to wipe channels, and now it's just put all the channels back to being sine waves, all at frequency of 1 times the speed, and you can wipe all of the modulations between the channels as well. So it's essentially back to fresh. Let's go to channel 1 there. So yeah, you can see frequencies back to 1, amplitude, no morphing, offset is at 0 as well. So we're all good. Okay, let's take the first channel and let's go into the FM bus. So that's that sine wave, turning that up and down already. And let's slow that down. Let's make that, I don't know, divide by 4. Because you only want it to happen sometimes. Now at the minute, and by default, all of these channels are working unipolar. So that, you know, they're going plus and minus. And we don't want that in this case, because I want it always stay above and work in that positive part of the modulation. So in amplitude, we've got a little setting here we can scroll down to, and we can change that from bi to uni. And now it's working from 0 to 5 volts as opposed to -5 to +5. It's had a bit of delay. Okay, essentially it's turning that up and down. And then let's take channel 2 and let's go into the partials. That's always fun. Just turn it up a bit. So let's go to channel 2. Oops, channel 2 here. And yeah, we'll leave it on the sine wave. I'm not going to do any modulation between channels just yet. I'm just going to set it up doing stuff. And let's do that divide by 3. So it's working differently to the first channel, which is divide by 4. And I'm going to leave that on bipolar just for giggles. Let's go crazy. And we've got something nice going on. Now this is running through a VCA if we want it to, so yeah, why don't we do that? Let's take, oh, I've already got a cable patched in. Let's plug this into the VCA of Ghost. And so this is channel 3, and let's change the waveform. Waveform triangle might be nice. And let's make that divide by 4.5. So now they're all working at different speeds. And there's no internal modulation going on yet. Everything's just doing its own thing. Let's bring in side 2. Do some reverb. Got another channel here. Maybe we'll run that through. Yeah, slide of focus or something. So it's modulating that. So if we go to, what's that? That's channel 4. Channel 4. And let's slow that down. This one. Like 3.5. All this movement now, it's all coming from one module. And now we've got all this set up, you know, we can go crazy and start getting the channels interacting with each other. So for example, let's go back to channel 1, and we can modulate the morphing of that from channel 3. Why not? It's not doing a great amount. Let's try channel 2. See what that does. Yeah, you can really see it's changed that waveform a little bit. Let's go from a channel we're not using, so 5, 6, 7 and 8 are not being used. So if we go to channel 5, and so let's go to channel 5. And let's choose random, and let's speed that one up a little bit by 1.5. Go back to channel 1. So let's change in the morphing from channel 5. Let's increase the amount. And channel 2, which is controlling the partials. Let's go to channel 2. And yeah, let's modulate the frequency of that from channel 1, which is being modulated by channel 5. Maybe I'll just make that a little bit more subtle. And then channel 3, which is doing the VCA. And by the way, we're just modulating the frequency there of channel 2, but we can also modulate the morphing of channel 2 as well, or at the same time. So let's modulate that from channel 5's random. You see what a modulation powerhouse this is, in terms of it all working together, manipulating each other. Now, like I say, if you like that, you can record that and just then put that onto one channel, everything that's going on there, if that's what you wanted, and that's within the record function. So if we're not using like channel 8, let's go channel 8. On channel 8, just like we held down the first button here and we could select scale and the wave folder and things like that, if we go to B, we can go into the record function here. And within the record function, you've got options to create triggers for turning on the recording, how long, how many bars. So let's say we'll set it to 2 bars. And the play and stop trigger could be an external input. So let's do that. I'm just going to take input 1 here. I'm going to take it from Steppy, which is just playing 1. I don't know if you can see this on the camera. Just at the start of every bar, we get something. So I can say external 1, and that will play and stop it if we want. In fact, I'm going to leave that on off because I want to manually do that. And then you can choose whether it'll start that on the rise or the fall or both. And then this is your record, like play, so you can select what starts the recording. So we want let's use external 1 to start the recording. Actually, it's already done it for us. You see it started recording into it. And you can choose whether it does that on the rise time, or whether it's continuous playback, or if it's triggered, and so on. Now it's only recording what's on that channel, which is a sine wave at the minute. So if we change that waveform, we change it to the output, we can actually take the output of different waveforms into this channel. Or if we was to go in, we could plug, let's say we had a load of LFOs and stuff connected together, doing some crazy modulation. We can then plug the combination of all of that into one of the inputs and record it into a channel, saving it and allow us to recall it later on, and then pull out all your patch cables, which is brilliant. So yeah, the input of this, we can select which input we're using and so on and so forth. You see it's already recording. In fact, it's doing overdub mode as well. So every time it receives a trigger, it will overdub that. So you can kind of jam with that as well. You can of course also record the pot as well. So going back to the record functions here, you could, sorry, the wave, the input, you could actually decide to record the pot input as well. So we could go to there's the pot input, and you could use that and record that into the channel as well. So you can kind of jam your own modulation, record it in, save it. So yeah, very powerful module, really nicely thought out. It's well worth having, I think, the extra inputs with Jin. You do get 3 as standard, and then you get your clock input as well. And I know, when I first saw this, I thought, this is going to be brilliant for playing live. For me, it's going to save so much in terms of like having to take out loads of modules, essentially recalling particular tracks, because most of the stuff that I do when I'm playing live, I want it to sound like the tracks that I've recorded. Or if I'm preparing something for a show, I want to maybe just save that, just like you would in a sequencer. I have the nerd sequencer here. I can generate some really complicated stuff out of the modulation outputs here, record that in and save it. It will be saved there as well, but I can manipulate it easier in here, because once it's in here, anything that I've recorded into this, I can then play around with the morphing and the phase and the offset, the amplitude, the frequency, and so on and so forth. So what a cool module. Really nicely thought out. Really nice approach. Go check it out. Hopefully you found this useful. Leave any comments below. Go check out their website, Mnemonic devices. And yeah, like and subscribe. Thank you for supporting the channel so far. Really appreciate it. Your support is most appreciated. Thanks everyone. Stay safe. And happy modulating, whatever. Look after yourselves. Cheers now.